Hello everyone, I'm Aleksandr, and I want to show you something that I found out in Fizzy. Okay. So, any of you explored the Codebase? Do you know what is that? So, Basecamp, the guys who build Rails, they made a new application called Fizzy, and the cool part about it is that it is fully available, the code base, and you can read everything, and you can also look through GitHub history and learn how people behind Basecamp and Rails actually build their applications. And so a couple of things, just probably too small. What I found out is that they try to avoid Redis as much as possible, and instead of that, they have solid cache, solid cable, and solid queue. And at first, I was thinking like that is such a cool idea to have solid queue in like a job processing in database, because you can have a single transaction, database transaction, and you write something in your record, and you also schedule a job, and then when it commits, it starts processing, like all good. No like distributed transactions like we have in Redis, because if you put job in Redis before you commit the transaction, you're gonna have like an interesting time, because the job will fail first time and will not fail the second time. And I was thinking, oh, that's cool, this is a solution. But if we look closer, it is not really. They have separate database. So the only thing they do is they just don't use Redis for jobs. They use their MySQL or SQLite, or you can use Postgres for this. So I'm not sure this is like a good idea, but that is the thing. That is how they do that. The other thing is their approach to, let's say, CSS. So first thing is, have you seen this kind of thing? So do you know in CSS there is sort of like importance that is like the more specific you write a selector, the more importance it has. And this is the way you can redefine this kind of importance and don't use important anymore, because you can put resets like to unify the view across all browser in the first layer, components in its components layer, and utilities, which looks like a Bootstrap or Tailwind CSS having the highest priority. So if you make a button and then you want to override just like, let's say, a color or make it differently, you just add this like txt x large, and it will just adjust the size without, so you don't need to use important in this case. What I also found out interesting is that they use helpers to, like a small partials, like a small view partials, they would just output HTML. There is like no logic in helpers. And this is kind of makes sense to me, because helpers are global across all of the application, and I saw so many times when people put logic in their helpers, and the worst case scenario is if you have the same name across different modules, because the one will override the other, and you're gonna have an interesting time debugging that. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so what I want to show here is helpers are not that bad if you use it like wisely. The other thing I wanted to show you is here the way they do services. Look at their services implementation. Oh, I cannot zoom this part. So do you see services? Or can I do this? Oh yeah, I can do this. So they say there are no services in their application. They don't use it. They use models instead. But look at this. Oh, yeah, this is, they say it's model, this is notification pusher, but then what does it look like? To me, it looks like a service. That's what we call services in our database. So when they say we don't use services, this is kind of not true. They just put it in a different folder. An interesting thing that I found out when looking through the code base is, so this is their card model. And they have a model called golden. This is basically a Boolean flag that lives in a separate table. And they have a different thing, which is closable. So they have like a closure model, which is kind of the same. It's just like, this is what normally would be a couple fields on your just normal table. Is it closed or not? Or if it's closed by someone, but they put it in a separate relation that is closure. And this is, I think, is an interesting approach to that. And what also they say, why is it they find it useful, is not only that you can work work in parallel. So you separate workload on this table, on the specific table. You just move this close, unclose, or whatever to a separate table, and then you can maintain it separately. But they also say that they found a big performance impact with this one, with these things. So instead of composing like a query, like using scopes on a model where closed or not closed or closed by, they inner join with this table and let database do this indexing. And so they search using index, they search in closure and they search in cards, and intersection between indexes is the result, or the opposite thing. So if you need to find something that is missing relation, I just found out recently that we can do this. We can do where missing and use the table, the other table. So I also found interesting their icons implementation. So have you seen the have you heard of like font awesome, for example, or bringing icons with SVG and rendering SVGs in the browser? So their approach is they use span and then they use SVG as a mask for this span, and this way you don't need to load this SVG embedded. Don't think about caching. Just let the browser do the hard work, and you just use CSS for icons. So, and this is how they define all of this. So they just say this using CSS variables. So icon have this URL, and here that's how they use it, using just things that built in the browser, just mask image. The other interesting part was frame reloader. So sometimes when you open a page, then you leave a page or switch to the other page in your browser on mobile or on desktop, then the connection between your element WebSocket on a client side and your server side can be lost, and you will not really be notified about that. And what they did is that when browser gets the focus back, when the browser gets the focus back, they call this reload, and they call the reload on this frame reloader, and it checks if last time we reloaded this part more than 10 minutes ago, they trigger a refresh of this like a notification bar or just any turbo frame that you have. That is also, I think, smart. And also, I think that bring a lot of my attention is morphing. So anyone used Turbo Morphing before? This is very interesting thing to me because what it does is that when it loads this part, that when your backend sends updated HTML, it will not simply replace the HTML, it will actually update one by one thing by one. Just if attribute is changed, it would update an attribute. If like the element disappeared, it would just exclude this element. It also has, as you may see in this turbo in the reference, something that you can control is so you can control how to morph elements or how to morph attributes. If you, let's say, you don't want a model to be closed or reopened, you just filter it in this before morph attribute. And things that I didn't find in documentation, but I found in Codebase is that you can have a callbacks. So if you pass, so this is like a turbo frame, and this is how I pass values to stimulus controller, and then in the on the stimulus side, you can have callbacks like that. So stimulus will run this callback if the value on this HTML attribute is changed. And you can run any kind of animations, like it's like in React, but better, in my opinion. Because and I'm going to show you just one example from my work that I did. So we have this this rewards here. So this is just like a chat system, and let's say we type like hello here, and you may see that it arrives in a separate tab. You can see that the model still stays open. This thing actually increased. We can click on this button. You can see that it moves on the other side without replacing HTML, without reloading, without anything. It just blends, it just merges the new one into the existing, and you can do really cool UI transitions with Turbo Morphing. So if you have Turbo in your application, just try it out. It is really cool. So just click one more button here. You can see that. Yep, that is it for my exploration of Fizzy, and I really encourage you to take a look inside the codebase. It's really interesting to see how guys who build Rails build real applications. Thank you.